Hello everybody, welcome to my channel.
Betty White, A Legacy of Laughter and Longevity. Betty White, January 17, 1922 to December 31, 2021, was an American actress, comedian, producer, and beloved cultural icon whose career spanned an astonishing 9 decades. Widely regarded as a pioneer of early television, she holds a unique place in entertainment history not only for her longevity but also for her warm, quick-witted comedic style that made her universally adored. Early life and career beginnings. Born in Oak Park, Illinois, Betty Marion White moved with her family to California during the Great Depression. Inspired by the wildlife shows she enjoyed as a child, she initially dreamed of becoming a forest ranger. At the time, women weren't allowed to serve as rangers, a barrier she jokingly referenced throughout her life, so she turned to acting. After high school, she pursued radio work, reading commercials and performing small roles before eventually landing her own radio show. Her early break in television came in the late 1940s, hosting and producing the live variety show Hollywood on television. In an era when television was still new, Betty not only performed on camera but also took on behind-the-scenes roles, breaking ground for women in a male-dominated industry. Sitcom stardom. The Mary Tyler Moore Show and The Golden Girls. Betty gained national fame in the 1970s portraying the saccharine yet slyly competitive Sue Ann Nivens on The Mary Tyler Moore Show. The role earned her 2 Emmy Awards and showcased her razor-sharp comedic timing. In 1985, she began her most iconic role, Rose Nylund on The Golden Girls. Rose, sweet, innocent, and armed with unforgettable stories about her hometown of St. Olaf, became one of television's most beloved comedic characters. The show was groundbreaking, exploring themes of friendship, love, aging, and independence with humor and emotional depth. Betty earned another Emmy Award for her performance, and the show remains a beloved classic worldwide. Reinvention and pop culture renaissance. In her later years, Betty White became a full-fledged pop culture phenomenon. Whether appearing on Saturday Night Live, thanks to a massive fan-driven campaign, starring in the sitcom Hot in Cleveland, or charming audiences on late-night talk shows, she proved that timing, wit, and fearlessness do not diminish with age. Her honesty, comedic boldness, and self-deprecating humor endeared her to new generations. She also became a beloved internet presence. Memes, tributes, and online fan movements celebrated her as a national treasure, often lovingly calling her America's grandmother. Advocacy and personal passions. Beyond her entertainment career, Betty White was a lifelong animal lover and advocate. She worked with the Los Angeles Zoo and numerous animal organizations for decades, often saying that animals were her greatest passion. Her charitable work was not for publicity, it was part of her daily life. Awards and honors. Betty White earned multiple Emmy Awards, SAG Awards, and a Grammy. She holds the Guinness World Record for the longest TV career for a female entertainer, affirming her unparalleled endurance in the entertainment world. Passing and legacy. Betty White passed away peacefully on December 31, 2021, just shy of her 100th birthday. The world mourned not only an actress, but a symbol of optimism, humor, and resilience. Her legacy lives on through groundbreaking work for women in television, iconic performances that remain timeless, unmatched comedic sharpness and fearlessness, endless kindness and compassion. Especially for animals, Betty White proved that laughter is ageless. She didn't just entertain, she inspired, showing that one can live a long life filled with joy, curiosity, generosity, and the courage to reinvent oneself again and again. A pioneer in the early days of television, Betty White was one of the few entertainers whose career began almost simultaneously with the birth of television itself. In the late 1940s, when TV was still largely experimental, she co-hosted Hollywood on television for 5.5 hours a day, 6 days a week, live and unscripted. Most performers would rotate, but Betty was there every day, improvising jokes, banter, and segments. Her involvement wasn't just on screen. She was a writer and producer at a time when women rarely held those roles. When she produced and starred in Life with Elizabeth, 1953 to 1955, she became one of the first female producers in television history, paving the way for women such as Lucille Ball and Mary Tyler Moore. Personal life, love, loss, and lasting devotion. Betty married 3 times, though she often joked that only the last one counted. Her marriage to Alan Ludden, the warm, charismatic host of Password, became a beloved Hollywood love story. They met when Betty was a guest on the game show in 1961. Ludden proposed multiple times before she finally accepted. They married in 1963. Betty never remarried after his death in 1981. Once you've had the best, who needs the rest? That single sentence, often quoted in interviews, reveals how deeply she cherished their relationship. The Golden Girls and its cultural impact. When The Golden Girls premiered in 1985, few expected a sitcom about 4 older women living together to become a cultural phenomenon. Betty originally auditioned for the role of Blanche Devereaux, the flirtatious Southern belle, while Rue McClanahan auditioned to play Rose Nilland. Knowing they had each played similar archetypes before, the director asked them to switch roles, and TV history was made. Rose's Ernest St. Olaf stories became legendary. The Herring Circus, the Dancing Goats, the Great Herring Boom, they turned Rose into an icon of naive sincerity and unintentional brilliance. The show tackled topics for its time considered taboo, including aging, illness, LGBTQ+ rights, and grief, but always with humor and heart. America's comeback queen. Most actors hope for one peak in their careers. Betty White had 4 major career renaissances, each with a new generation of fans. Early TV hosting and producing, 1950s, The Mary Tyler Moore Show, 1970s, The Golden Girls, 1980s to 1990s, a national resurgence in the 2000s and 2010s. Fueled by the internet, her late life resurgence included a Snickers Super Bowl commercial in 2010 that went viral, a Facebook campaign that led to her hosting Saturday Night Live at age 88, making her the oldest SNL host in history, starring on Hot in Cleveland, becoming a social media icon. Despite not using social media herself, fans treated her as a symbol of positivity, joy, and almost mythical endurance. Animal advocacy, a lifelong passion. Betty once said that if she had not become an actress, she would have been a zookeeper or a forest ranger. In fact, in 2010, the U.S. Forest Service made her an honorary forest ranger, fulfilling that childhood dream at age 88. For more than 40 years, she supported the Morris Animal Foundation, the Los Angeles Zoo, where she served on the board. She donated millions of dollars, quietly, and never wanted credit for it. When asked why she loved animals so much, she simply replied, "They love unconditionally. They don't care who you are or what you do." Awards and honors, highlights, 8 Emmy Awards, Grammy Award, Best Spoken Word Album for her memoir If You Ask Me, and Of Course You Won't, Screen Actors Guild Lifetime Achievement Award, Television Hall of Fame inductee, Guinness World Record for longest TV career as a female entertainer. Her legacy is measured not just in awards but in affection. She was adored. Final years and passing. Betty White passed away on December 31, 2021, just 17 days before her 100th birthday. She died peacefully in her sleep at home. The timing felt symbolic, the end of an era, yet a reminder that she lived with humor until the very last moment. When people mourned her passing, they did so with laughter as well as tears, exactly the way she lived. Her 100th birthday became a worldwide celebration anyway. Legacy: a trailblazer for women in television production, a comedy legend with unmatched timing, a champion for kindness, aging with dignity, and living joyfully, a reminder that humor keeps the heart young. Betty White showed the world how to live a long life, not just in years, but in love, laughter, and generosity. Behind the scenes, the woman on set. Anyone who worked with Betty White consistently described her as prepared, professional, mischievous in the best ways on the set of The Mary Tyler Moore Show. Betty's character, Sue Ann Nivens, was outwardly sugary but delightfully vicious underneath. Cast members would laugh about how opposite that was from Betty's real personality, except for one secret: Betty loved a good dirty joke. Ed Asner once said, "Betty White is one of the filthiest-mouthed people on the planet, in the most adorable way." On the Golden Girls set, Betty, Rue McClanahan, and Bea Arthur had very different energies. Rue was theatrical and glamorous. Bea was dry and reserved. Betty was upbeat and cheerful. Bea sometimes struggled with Betty's perpetual optimism. Rue once joked, "Betty is like a machine of happiness. Bea and I just couldn't figure out where she kept the batteries." Despite personality differences, the chemistry on screen was magic. Betty said that The Golden Girls was the most joyful working experience of her life. Betty White and the Internet. A love affair. One of the most extraordinary things about Betty White's career was how young fans adopted her as a modern icon, even though she was in her late 80s and 90s. Her unexpected internet cult status exploded when memes began circulating calling her immortal. A Facebook group amassed hundreds of thousands demanding she host Saturday Night Live. The Snickers Super Bowl commercial showed her fearlessly getting tackled during a football game. Her reaction to fame from the younger generation was simple: "I'm just grateful people still invite me to the party." She wasn't online herself. She famously said she didn't want to waste time she could be spending with animals or working, but she loved hearing about her memes and trends. Her comedy style, innocence plus boldness. Betty White mastered the comedy of contrast. Instead of telling jokes, she was the joke, embodying characters who appeared innocent and sweet, only to surprise audiences with unexpected wit or sly innuendo. This made her timeless. Examples of her comedic trademarks: playing dumber or sweeter than everyone else, delivering wild punchlines with a straight face, using silence and timing as part of the joke in The Proposal, 2009. Where she starred with Sandra Bullock and Ryan Reynolds, she improvised several lines that became fan favorites. On set, she and Ryan developed a playful public banter that fans adored for years. Ryan Reynolds once joked, "I've been in a decades-long feud with Betty White. It's complicated. She started it." Betty loved that she was treated like a peer, not handled with kid gloves. Work ethic and philosophy of life. Even at 90+, Betty White didn't slow down. Her secret? Keep busy and stay interested in life. If you're learning, you're living. She never defined herself by age. She rejected phrases like, "at your age," joking that the only time age matters is when cheese is involved. Her rules for happiness: stay positive, negativity ages people. Be kind, you never regret kindness. Have a purpose, even small goals keep you going. Laugh often, especially at yourself. Another favorite quote: "You don't luck into something like this. You make the most of the chances you're given." Animal advocacy. Quiet generosity. Betty didn't just donate money, she donated time, voice, and influence. Helped redesign Los Angeles zoo exhibits for better animal welfare, funded research for endangered species through the Morris Animal Foundation, volunteered weekly when not filming the Los Angeles Zoo. Said after her passing, "Betty White didn't just care about animals, She cared about the people who care for animals. Her friends said that even when she was exhausted after filming, she would still stop to volunteer if an animal needed attention. Public persona versus private life. Publicly, Betty was always on, sparkling, cheerful, and funny. Privately, she was quietly introspective, a crossword puzzle fanatic, a lover of classic TV and old game shows, deeply sentimental about her late husband Alan Ludden. She never used a computer. She wrote notes and scripts by hand. She still preferred landline telephones. Her favorite drink? Vodka and diet soda. Her preferred meal? A hot dog and French fries. Betty never lost her sense of simplicity. End-of-life reflections. In her final interviews, she said she was grateful for a life filled with work. She loved a marriage that fulfilled her heart. Fans who treated her as family. When asked how she wanted to be remembered, she replied, "I want to be remembered as someone who made people laugh." And she did, for nearly 100 years. Final thought: Betty White didn't live nearly 100 years by accident. She lived that long because she embraced curiosity over fear, humor over worry, love over regret. Betty White didn't just add years to her life, she added life to her years. Detailed career timeline: 1922, born January 17 in Oak Park, Illinois. Only child. Family soon moves to California. 1930s, falls in love with nature and animals. Writes and stars in a graduation play, decides to pursue acting. 1940s, begins performing on radio because film studios said she wasn't photogenic enough. Makes her first TV appearance shortly after World War II. 1949 to 1953, co-hosts Hollywood on television, performing live for hours daily. Learns production, writing, and hosting, a rare skill set for any actor at that time. 1953, creates, produces, and stars in Life with Elizabeth. Becomes one of the first women to produce a sitcom. 1960s, appears frequently on game shows, especially Password. Meets host Alan Ludden, falls in love and marries. 1973 to 1977, joins the Mary Tyler Moore Show as Sue Ann Nivens. Wins 2 Emmys. Hollywood rediscovers her. 1985 to 1992, stars as Rose Nylund on The Golden Girls. Wins another Emmy and earns her most iconic role. 1990s to 2000s, guest roles, voice acting, game shows, award show hosting. 2010, becomes the oldest ever Saturday Night Live host, age 88. Viral Snickers Super Bowl commercial sparks internet love affair. 2012 to 2014, stars in Hot in Cleveland. Wins Screen Actors Guild Lifetime Achievement Award. 2021, passes away peacefully on December 31 at age 99, weeks short of turning 100. Sparkles iconic quotes: funny, wise, and very Betty, on aging. Don't try to be young. Just open your mind. Stay interested in stuff. On positivity: you can't get rid of me that easy. On her long life: I have a 2-story house and a very bad memory, so I'm up and down those stairs all day. On not having children: I didn't want to take something away from my work, and I knew my work was my passion. On animals: animals don't lie. Animals don't criticize. If animals have bad days, they handle them better than humans do. On her favorite snack: vodka is kind of a hobby. Glowing star: lesser known facts and fascinating stories. Pushpin: she turned down The Golden Girls originally, sort of. Betty was first offered the Blanche Devereaux role, The Flirt, but producers realized it would feel too similar to her Sue Ann Nivens persona. So they swapped the roles. Betty became Rose. That switch made history. Pushpin: she was rejected by film studios. Early in her career, multiple studios told her, "You're not photogenic enough for the camera." She proved them wrong on television, where she became royalty. Pushpin, she saved a TV show from being cancelled. When NBC considered canceling Hot in Cleveland, fan mail for Betty alone convinced executives to keep it on longer. Pushpin, she was obsessed with games, not just game shows. Played Scrabble between takes on set. Was fiercely competitive. Knew her way around poker, too. Alan Ludden once said, "Betty plays to win. Every time." Pushpin, she was made an honorary U.S. Forest Ranger at age 88. Because women weren't allowed to be rangers when she was young, she joked, "Now I'm official. I can die happy." Pushpin, she had a secret dirty sense of humor. Off camera, she enjoyed salty jokes and could make an entire crew crack up. Ryan Reynolds said, "Betty White did more for comedy than I ever will, and she did it while being filthier than me." Trophy impact and cultural influence. Small Diamond, the feminist trailblazer, before the word existed, produced her own show, hired female writers, fought for creative control. Small Diamond, champion of aging with confidence. Betty remained stylish and humorous into her late 90s. She changed how society viewed older women. Not fragile, not invisible, still funny, relevant, and desirable to watch. Small Diamond, the TV historian, she lived through every era of television. Black and white to streaming variety shows to prestige sitcoms, live shows to digital recordings, and she kept evolving. Red Heart, why the world loved her because she was genuine. She didn't pretend to be younger. She didn't care about Hollywood drama. She treated every person, and every animal, with kindness. She loved her fans back. The internet adored her because she embodied something pure, joy without cynicism, humor without cruelty. When she passed away, people cried and laughed at the same time, exactly how she lived. Sparkle's final tribute. Betty White didn't just exist in entertainment history. She shaped it. She broke rules. She built television. She aged with defiance. She loved deeply. She laughed always. Her name became shorthand for kindness, longevity, talent, joy. Betty White didn't just live to 99. She lived fully for 99 years. Betty White. More personal stories and hidden moments. Small Diamond, she was a trailblazer in live television. Betty worked during the era when TV was live, no retakes. Mistakes happened constantly, and Betty learned to turn them into comedy. On Hollywood, on television, she once sneezed in the middle of a singing performance and couldn't stop laughing. Viewers loved it. That taught her, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be real. This natural, authentic presence became her calling card. Small Diamond, she became a comedy star by going against the joke. Comedy in the 1950s to 1970s was often loud, exaggerated, slapstick. Betty went the opposite direction. Deliver the joke quietly, let the audience connect the dots, stay innocent on the surface, shock with the punchline, no mugging, no overplaying, just pure timing. Cloris Leachman once said, Betty could say more with a pause than most comedians say in a monologue. Small Diamond, her love story with Alan Ludden was true Hollywood rarity. When Betty first met Alan Ludden, she wasn't interested. She had already been through 2 unhappy marriages and didn't want to try again. To court her, Alan wore a bracelet that said, "Yes," he told her, "when you're ready. Just say it." After a year, she accepted. They were married for 18 years until his death. Betty said she never took off her wedding ring. "He made me feel safe. He made me feel adored." That is why she never remarried, not because she didn't believe in love, but because she already had the perfect one. Small Diamond, she surprised everyone on her final day of The Golden Girls during the final episode taping. Each actress was devastated. They had become sisters. After the last scene, they stood in a circle and cried together. As they finished, Betty looked around and quipped, "Well, this sucks." Everyone burst into laughter through tears. That was Betty, using humor at the exact moment it was needed. Flamingo deeper dive into Rose Nylund, The Golden Girls. Betty turned what could have been a one-note, dumb character into something much richer. How Betty built the role. She researched Minnesota and Scandinavian culture. She insisted that Rose not be a joke, she was earnest, not stupid. She used Rose to bring innocence into heavy conversations. Example. When Dorothy says something sarcastic, Rose answers with total sincerity, which makes the line even funnier. Writers noticed that Betty could turn any monologue into gold. They increased Rose's Street Olaf stories because Betty could make nonsense sound believable. Back in St. Olaf, we used to have a festival in honor of corn. Everyone would dress up as their favorite kind of corn. Her delivery made it timeless. Mike Betty White as an activist, quiet but fearless. Betty wasn't loud about activism, but she used her influence where it mattered. Checkmark civil rights. In 1954 she hosted The Betty White Show, a daytime variety show. She featured a talented black tap dancer named Arthur Duncan regularly. Network executives told her to remove him. Betty refused. He stays. Live with it. She gave him more airtime. That was 1954. Before the civil rights movement. Before MLK's marches. Betty didn't just talk about equality, she acted on it. The depth of her animal advocacy. Betty White didn't just love animals, she worked for them. Paid for animal surgery when owners couldn't afford it. Funded research for endangered species. Helped build the Los Angeles Zoo's new habitats. Once, while volunteering at the zoo, she asked if she could hold a baby elephant. Keepers said, "No, too dangerous." Betty answered, "If I can handle Hollywood executives, I can handle an elephant." She got to hold the elephant. Cocktail. Betty White's pastime. Poker, vodka, and crossword puzzles. After filming, she loved sitting down with a vodka soda doing a crossword. Watching game shows her daily schedule at age 93. Wake up with toast and a Diet Coke, do a crossword puzzle, work or volunteer, play poker with friends. When asked her diet secret, she said, hot dogs and french fries. And don't eat anything green. That stuff will kill you. Crown. Her influence on comedy and television. What she changed. Proof that funny women could headline shows, broke age stereotypes, reclaimed the idea of older women on TV, showed that kindness and strength can coexist. Modern actresses like Tina Fey, Amy Poehler, Sandra Bullock, Melissa McCarthy openly credit Betty White as an influence. Glowing star. Her final message to the world. Shortly before she passed, she was asked what she wanted her fans to know. She replied, softly, "How glad I am they've stayed with me all these years." She never took fame for granted. Dizzy. Why she endures. Because she embodied what people crave. Joy, warmth, humor without cruelty, authenticity. Betty White wasn't a star because she was famous. She was famous because she made people feel good. Even more behind-the-scenes stories. Small Diamond. B. Arthur once confronted Betty White, but the reason is beautiful. B. Arthur, Dorothy on The Golden Girls, was known to be more private and serious. Betty was bubbly and relentlessly optimistic. One day, B pulled Betty aside and said, "Why are you always so damn happy?" Betty replied, "Because it beats the alternative." That was Betty, she chose gratitude. Small Diamond. Betty White versus the studio execs, 1950s, on The Betty White Show in 1954. Execs told her to remove black tap dancer Arthur Duncan because Southern stations complained. Betty's answer, "I'm sorry. Live with it." Then she gave Arthur more screen time. Decades later, Arthur Duncan said, "That woman changed my life." Betty never bragged about it. She just did the right thing. Small Diamond on The Golden Girls. Betty knew everyone's lines, not just her own. Directors were astonished. Betty memorized not only her script but everyone else's lines. Rue McClanahan once forgot a line and looked panicked. Betty whispered her next line to her, in character, without breaking. Rue said, "She was a machine of kindness." Small Diamond, a fan, once fainted when meeting Betty White at a book signing. A teenage girl was so overwhelmed to meet Betty that she fainted. Betty kneeled beside her until she woke up. When the girl apologized, Betty said, "That's okay, honey. I've had men faint over me too." Trophy lesser-known career milestones. Sparkles. She was the first woman to win a Daytime Emmy for hosting a game show for just men, in 1983. Making her the first woman ever to win a game show hosting Emmy. She loved game shows so much that she said, "I married my favorite game show host." Sparkles. She voiced characters in modern animated shows Family Guy, The Simpsons, SpongeBob SquarePants. Yes, she voiced Beatrice in 2016. She stayed relevant, always. Sparkles. She did a rap song. At age 89 in 2011, Betty White appeared in a music video called I'm Still Hot. She raps. There is a boa constrictor. There are muscular dancers. Betty steals the video. Paw Animal Rescue.
Bye bye. Thanks for watching. Bye.